You sit before me, and though your eyes may seem to gaze outward into this room, I know they are also searching inward, perhaps without your conscious consent. For even now, as you listen, there is a presence behind your hearing, a silent figure that watches with a knowing patience. It has been with you since the earliest moments of your childhood, since the first time you felt shame and quickly turned away, since the first time you wanted to strike or cry or scream but swallowed it into silence. That figure has never left you. It is your shadow. When I speak of the shadow, I do not speak of some foreign enemy that sneaks into your life from the outside. I speak of that which is native to your soul, the exiled half of your own nature, the unrecognized twin who follows you in every step. You may pretend you are unaware of it, but your relationships reveal its footprints. Why do you repeat the same arguments, drawn like a moth into the same destructive flames? Why do you fall in love with people who wound you in the very ways you fear? Why do you recoil from others who mirror what you cannot tolerate in yourself? The answer is not random chance, nor cruel fate. It is the shadow whispering from within, steering the very choices you think are your own. The human being, when born, is whole, like a seed containing the full pattern of the tree. Yet our societies, our families, and our religions carve this seed, pruning away what is not acceptable, demanding we show only the light. You learn to smile when you want to frown, to speak softly when rage claws at your throat, to present purity. When desire burns in secret, every unlived impulse, every forbidden truth is pressed downward into the unconscious, into the darkness you do not wish to see. But energy does not vanish, it only transforms. That is the eternal law of the psyche. What is repressed will return, and if you refuse to face it, it will seize the reins of your life. Have you ever awoken from a dream where you were chased by a monstrous figure, faceless, yet somehow familiar? This is the shadow knocking on the door of your dream life, demanding to be acknowledged. And yet, in waking life, you meet the same figure in other forms, perhaps in the lover who betrays you, in the colleague whose arrogance enrages you, in the friend whose neediness suffocates you. You call them enemies, fools, abusers, but in truth they are emissaries of your own inner exile. The qualities you cannot endure in others are often those you cannot bear to own in yourself. Projection is the most faithful servant of the shadow. Imagine the man who despises liars, who with fury unmasks deception in everyone around him. He does not realize that he too deceives first and foremost himself. He deceives himself about his own motives, his own desires. The liar outside him is but a mirror of the liar within. Or picture the woman who cannot tolerate selfishness in others, who prides herself on being endlessly giving, endlessly forgiving, but beneath her radiant generosity lurks a hunger for power, a fear of acknowledging her own need. The selfishness she loathes is her own unlived right to claim space. Do you see? The shadow does not disappear. It simply waits for its moment to appear in the reflection of another face. That is why relationships are the crucible of the psyche, the alchemical vessel in which your hidden darkness is revealed. To love another is to confront yourself, to wrestle with the disowned fragments of your own soul. When you quarrel with your partner, you quarrel with your own shadow. When you idolize another, you worship a light you have refused to ignite within yourself. There is, in the unconscious, a theater. In this theater, the shadow is both playwright and actor. It sets the stage of your relationships, writing roles for lovers, friends, and enemies to play. And you, the conscious self, stand upon that stage, thinking you are free, while in truth you speak lines you never chose. You repeat patterns, not because you are cursed, but because you have not taken authorship of the script. Only by turning toward the shadow can you reclaim the pen. Consider for a moment the myth of the sun god who journeys each night into the underworld. Without that descent into darkness, there can be no sunrise. The same is true of the human soul. You wish to be happy, to be whole, to be loved. Yet you shrink from the descent. But there is no wholeness without shadow. To ignore it is to live half a life, to walk as a fractured being. You may shine in the daylight of your virtues, but your relationships will remain haunted, manipulated by what you refuse to see. In my work with patients, I have seen this truth revealed time and again. A woman who complains endlessly of her husband's coldness eventually realizes it is her own emotions she has frozen. He is but the mirror. A man who rages against the vanity of others discovers that he himself longs to be admired, yet Dar is not admitted. When these hidden truths are brought into consciousness, relationships shift as if by magic, but the magic is only the alchemy of self-recognition. I must tell you, confronting the shadow is not an intellectual task. It is not enough to nod your head and say, yes, I have anger. Yes, I have desire. Yes, I'm selfish at times. The shadow is not appeased by polite acknowledgement. It demands encounter. It demands you feel the heat of the emotions you have banished, that you allow the forbidden images of your dreams to strike you, that you accept the parts of yourself that terrify you. Only then does the shadow release its grip. You may fear that by admitting your darkness, you will become monstrous. But the opposite is true. By denying it, you give it power in secret. A man who represses his aggression may believe himself harmless, yet his anger seeps out in sarcasm, in cruelty toward those weaker than himself, in sudden violent outbursts he cannot control. A woman who denies her sexuality may appear saintly, but her desires erupt in distorted forms, in obsessive fantasies, in manipulative seductions. The shadow you refuse to own will own you. Yet, if you look it in the eye, if you say, yes, this too is me, then its energy becomes yours to use. Anger becomes strength. Desire becomes vitality. Selfishness becomes self-respect. This is the paradox of the shadow. What you fear will destroy you is what can make you whole. So I ask you now, in this gathering, to pause for a moment, breathe, and feel who are the people you despise, what qualities in others provoke your strongest reactions. Do not dismiss them as simply bad people or unfortunate circumstances. Look closer. What in them is also in you? What is it that you have not dared to acknowledge? For there, in the heart of your irritation, is the trail of your shadow. And ask, too, of those you adore, those you place upon pedestals, what light do you see in them that you believe you lack? For the shadow hides not only darkness, but light as well. Many of you have buried your power, your brilliance, your creativity, fearing it would make you different, envied or unloved. So you project it onto heroes, lovers, gurus. You chase them endlessly, not realizing you are chasing yourself. The shadow is not evil in itself. It is simply the unlived. It is the sum of all that you have neglected, rejected, or denied, and it will guide your life until you make it conscious. You cannot outrun it. You can only turn and meet it, as one would meet a long-lost companion who has grown bitter in exile. The great danger of our modern age is not that people are wicked, but that they are unconscious. They believe themselves free while shackled by unseen chains. They wage wars not knowing they are fighting their own shadows. They destroy relationships not realizing they are at war with themselves. To awaken to the shadow is to awaken to responsibility, to take ownership of the theater within, to admit that you are both actor and playwright. And so I say to you, the shadow you refuse to see is controlling your life and your relationships. But if you dare to see it, if you dare to invite it into the light of your awareness, it becomes not your master, but your ally. Then, and only then, can you begin to love in truth, to relate in freedom, to live as a whole being. The journey into the shadow is like descending a staircase into a dimly lit chamber of your own soul. The steps are uneven, and each one echoes with forgotten voices. These are the voices of childhood, of the moments when you were told, do not cry, do not shout, do not dream of such things. They are the voices of parents who were themselves bound by their own shadows, passing down what they could not bear to face. Each unspoken demand, each silent judgment, each dismissal of your instinct was a stone placed upon the trapdoor of your inner life. But the trapdoor never fully locks. The shadow leaks through, whispering in dreams, erupting in sudden emotion, guiding your hands and lips before your conscious mind can intervene. I have said before that the unconscious is like nature itself. It does not ask your permission to exist. You may deny it, but it acts regardless. Just as the sea crashes against the shore, whether or not you are listening, so the shadow shapes your choices, whether or not you acknowledge it. And when you persist in ignoring it, it grows more primitive, more chaotic, more destructive. The shadow denied becomes the demon. The shadow acknowledged becomes the teacher. Let me tell you of a patient who once came to me, a man of great intellect, refined and precise in his manners. He was respected in his profession, admired for his calm reason. But beneath this cultivated mask, he was tormented by dreams of violence. Night after night, he found himself killing strangers, watching blood flow from wounds he inflicted with his own hands. He awoke in terror, certain that he was harboring evil. Yet, when we explored his life, we found a different story. He had since childhood, been trained to suppress all anger, all assertiveness. He had built a persona of polite restraint so complete that even in moments of injustice, he would bow his head and remain silent. The energy of his repressed rage had nowhere to go but into his dreams, where it appeared as murder. Was he a murderer? No. He was a man estranged from his own strength. His shadow was not urging him to harm others, but to reclaim the power of his anger, to recognize that the capacity for destruction is also the foundation of courage and protection. When he began to allow himself to feel anger in waking life, to speak his truth, even when it caused conflict, the violent dreams subsided. The shadow had been integrated, not destroyed. You must understand this. To see the shadow is not to become sinful, but to become whole. Every human being is capable of cruelty, deceit, lust, greed, cowardice. To deny this is to walk blindly into its grip. But when you say, yes, this too is within me, then you can choose. Without awareness, you are possessed. With awareness, you are free. Do you recall the old stories of demons who could only be defeated when their true names were spoken aloud? This is the essence of shadow work. To name what is hidden robs it of its secret power, but to refuse to name it, to pretend it does not exist, is to allow it to rule you in silence. The shadow thrives in the unspoken. This is why your relationships so often feel like battlegrounds. You are not only meeting another person, you are meeting yourself through them. The anger you project, the neediness you resent, the betrayal you fear, all of these are mirrors. You may believe you are fighting your lover, your friend, your parent, but in truth you are wrestling with your own shadow in their guise. This is why conflicts repeat, why divorces echo the wounds of childhood, why friendships collapse in the same familiar patterns. Until you see the shadow, you will call the same actors onto the stage again and again, believing each time that the script is new. Dreams are the royal road to the shadow. Pay attention to those figures who pursue you, mock you, seduce you, frighten you. They are not random phantoms, but living fragments of your soul. I recall the dream of a young woman who was chased by a grotesque clown with a painted smile. She woke trembling, insisting it was meaningless nonsense. But as we spoke, she revealed how often she herself wore a smile in life, a mask to hide her despair. The clown was her shadow, forcing her to see the falseness of her performance. The dream was grotesque because the mask had grown unbearable. The shadow had painted its grin too wide, making visible the lie she lived. Every dream in which you are chased, trapped, or confronted by some dark figure is an invitation. Do not flee from these figures. Ask them their name. If you are courageous, you may even turn to them in the dream itself and say, "What do you want from me?" Often the answer is shocking, liberating, for the shadow is not only your enemy, it is also your guide. There are archetypal dimensions to the shadow, patterns that stretch beyond the personal, into the collective. You see them in myth and religion, in the figure of the trickster, the devil, the outcast, the monster at the edge of the village. These are not mere stories. They are the psychic landscapes of humanity, When a culture denies its shadow, it projects it outward, creating scapegoats, inventing enemies, waging wars. The witch trials, the persecutions, the genocides, these are eruptions of the collective shadow. What is refused within bursts forth without, demanding to be seen in terrible form. You must be vigilant. Then, not only with your personal shadow, but with the shadow of your community, your nation, your culture. Whenever you see a group demonizing another, accusing them of carrying all the evil, all the corruption, know this: the shadow is at work. The more vehement the accusation, the more unconscious the projector. Whole civilizations can fall into this blindness, and they always pay the price in blood. But let us return to the intimate, for it is there that you can begin the work. Ask yourself, what parts of me do I least want others to see? What do I hide even from myself? What qualities do I most despise in others? These questions are not comfortable, but they are essential. For every answer is a lantern lowered into the chamber of the shadow. And each lantern reveals not a monster, but a fragment of your own soul longing to come home. Do not imagine, however, that this work is quick or easy. The shadow resists exposure. It has grown accustomed to its exile, and it defends itself with cunning. It will distract you, convincing you that the problem is always out there, in the other person, in fate, in chance. It will whisper that you are too good, too enlightened, too pure to harbor such darkness. Beware of this. The more virtuous you believe yourself, the more dangerous your shadow becomes. I have seen holy men undone by the shadow they denied, leaders toppled by the desires they repressed, healers corrupted by the wounds they would not acknowledge. The brighter the persona, the darker the shadow. This is the law of psychic balance. If you build a tower of light, its foundation must plunge into equal depth. If you will not descend willingly, the collapse will drag you downward. Yet there is hope, profound hope, for every descent into the shadow is also an ascent into consciousness. The treasure is always guarded by the dragon. The gold you seek, the vitality, creativity, authenticity you long for lies behind the very qualities you fear. To become whole, you must embrace contradiction. You must say, I am both gentle and fierce, both selfless and selfish, both light and dark. Only then do you become human in the fullest sense. The path of individuation, the journey toward the self, requires this reconciliation. Without the shadow, the self cannot emerge. It is the tension of opposites, the union of light and dark, that creates transformation. Just as in alchemy, the lead must be confronted and transmuted into gold. So in the psyche, the shadow must be faced and integrated. This is the true meaning of transformation, not the elimination of darkness, but its inclusion in a higher harmony. So when I tell you that the shadow you refuse to see is controlling your life and relationships, I am not condemning you. I am inviting you. I am saying that within your conflicts, within your repeated wounds, lies the map to your own wholeness. Your enemy is your teacher. Your dream is your scripture. Your shadow is your doorway to the self. And now I ask you to consider What would it mean for you to truly turn and face your shadow? Not in theory, but in practice. What relationship would you see differently? What anger would you dare to feel? What desire would you admit? What need would you acknowledge? The answer may frighten you, but that is how you know you are close to truth. Fear is the shadow's guardian, keeping you from entering the chamber where the treasure lies. But if you walk through the fear, you will find that the monster you dreaded is, in the end, your own reflection. Waiting to embrace you, you must begin to recognize that the shadow is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. So long as you treat it as an enemy, you will remain in conflict with yourself, and that conflict will spill into your relationships, your work, your society. But when you begin to see the shadow as a companion, however wild or unruly, do you discover that your wholeness has always been waiting for you behind the mask of what you most feared. Consider the archetypes that rise from the depths of the collective unconscious. The shadow is not merely your personal anger, your private desire, your hidden envy. It is also the collective image of all humanity's disowned qualities. That is why so many myths across cultures tell the same story of descent into the underworld, of confrontation with monsters and demons, of heroes who must pass through darkness before they find the light. These stories are not only ancient tales, they are psychic maps of the path you too must walk. When Persephone was pulled into Hades, it was not simply a tale of abduction. It was the story of a soul entering its shadow world, of innocence, forced to meet death on désir and darkness. When Christ descended into hell, it was not only a theological event, but a psychic drama that every human heart must undergo the confrontation with the inner inferno before resurrection. When Buddha faced Mara beneath the Bodhi tree, the demons were not external. They were projections of his own shadow, temptations and fears that had to be integrated before enlightenment could emerge. Do you see? The myth of descent is universal because the shadow is universal. To live is to carry within you both heaven and hell, both saint and sinner, both creator and destroyer. The refusal to acknowledge this duality is the seed of neurosis, the soil of projection, the source of endless suffering. But to embrace it consciously is to step onto the path of individuation, the road that leads not to perfection but to wholeness. Relationships are the most immediate arena where the shadow reveals itself. You may think you are simply choosing a partner, guided by attraction, values, shared interests. But beneath those surface choices, deeper forces are at play. Often you are drawn not to the person who flatters your ego, but to the one who embodies your shadow. That is why love so often feels like fate, like compulsion, like madness. You are magnetized toward the qualities you have hidden from yourself, compelled to encounter them in the body and soul of another. How many times have you said, "I don't know why I keep ending up with the same kind of person"? It is not coincidence. It is the shadow seeking recognition through repetition. The woman who fears her own power finds herself drawn to domineering men. The man who suppresses his vulnerability falls in love with women whose sensitivity overwhelms him. You are not simply choosing, you are being chosen by the unconscious, drawn into dramas that are meant to force you to confront what you would otherwise ignore. And so, love becomes a battleground of shadows. The very qualities that first fascinate you become the ones you later despise. The charm becomes manipulation. The sensitivity becomes weakness. The strength becomes tyranny. What has happened? You have fallen in love with your own shadow, projected onto another. At first you worship it, then you condemn it, never realizing that both worship and condemnation are forms of blindness. Only when you see through the projection, when you admit, this too is within me, does the relationship have the chance to mature into true love. True love, then, is not the avoidance of shadow, but the mutual recognition of it. Two people who can admit their darkness, who can say to each other, yes, I'm capable of cruelty, I'm capable of fear, I am capable of betrayal, and yet who choose to remain in dialogue. These two are walking the path of individuation together. Their love is not based on illusion, but on truth. Not on the denial of shadow, but on its integration. But such love is rare, for most people are terrified of their own depths. They prefer the comfort of projection, the intoxication of infatuation, the drama of conflict. They prefer to remain children in the psyche, blaming others for what they cannot bear to own. To grow into adulthood of the soul requires a courage. Few are willing to summon the courage to sit in silence with the shadow, to listen to its voice, to embrace the paradox of being both light and dark. Dreams continue to be the most faithful guides in this work. Many times I have watched how a dream, when honored, breaks open the prison of the conscious mind. I recall a dream of a man who walked into a church, only to find it filled with snakes. I awoke horrified, convinced it was a nightmare. But when we spoke, it became clear that the church represented his rigid pious persona, his attempt to live only in the light. The snakes, ancient symbols of transformation and renewal, were his shadow energies, invading the sacred space to demand recognition. They were not evil, they were the life force he had tried to banish. When he began to honor those serpents, his sexuality, his anger, his instinct, his life grew richer, more authentic. The dream had revealed the path to wholeness. The unconscious does not lie. It speaks in symbols, in images that may disturb you but always contain truth. When you are pursued by shadows in dreams, when you are swallowed by darkness, when you are mocked by grotesque figures, the unconscious is telling you something must be faced. Do not dismiss these dreams as nonsense. They are scripture written in the language of the soul. I must emphasize again, the shadow is not only composed of what you fear, but also of what you long for. Many of you have hidden your gifts in the darkness. Perhaps as a child you were mocked for your creativity, and so you buried it. Perhaps your brilliance made others uncomfortable, and so you dimmed it. Perhaps your strength frightened your parents, and so you suppressed it. This to become part of the shadow, the golden shadow, as I have called it. When you project it onto others, you admire them, envy them, worship them, never realizing that you are seeing your own unlived greatness. To reclaim the golden shadow is as necessary as to confront the dark one. If you do not, you will forever chase after idols, placing your light in others while denying it in yourself. You will become dependent on heroes, lovers, leaders, always feeling less than, always waiting for someone outside to embody what you already carry within. The work then is double: to own your darkness and to own your light. Only when you can say, yes, I am capable of cruelty and of compassion, of weakness and of strength, of lust and of purity, of despair and of creativity. Only then do you become whole. Wholeness is not perfection. It is not the absence of flaws. It is the embrace of opposites, the recognition that the self is larger than all contradictions. This is why the symbol of the mandala has always been sacred to me. It is the image of the self, the circle that contains all the harmony of opposites in the mandala. Light and dark are not enemies but complements, weaving together to form a totality. To live within the mandala of the self is to cease dividing your soul into acceptable and unacceptable, worthy and unworthy. It is to stand in the center, knowing that you are both shadow and light, and that both are necessary for the fullness of life. When you live this way, your relationships change. No longer do you demand that others carry your projections. No longer do you punish them for showing you what you cannot bear to see. Instead, you thank them. You say, because you mirror my shadow, I can see myself more clearly. Because you trigger my anger, I can confront the anger within me. Because you dazzle me with your brilliance, I can reclaim the brilliance I have denied. In this way, relationships become not traps of repetition, but crucibles of transformation. Yes, the shadow controls your life when it is unseen. But when it is seen, it becomes the source of your deepest freedom. For to see your shadow is to claim responsibility. It is to stop blaming fate. Stop cursing your enemies. Stop clinging to idols. It is to say, I am the one who must integrate my own soul. This is the beginning of individuation, the sacred journey toward the self. And make no mistake, the self is not merely the ego made stronger. It is the union of conscious and unconscious, the reconciliation of shadow and light, the emergence of a wholeness far greater than the personality you present to the world. The self is the divine within the archetype of totality, to the image of God imprinted in the human soul. To reach it, you must pass through the shadow. There is no other way. To integrate the shadow is not a one-time act, not a sudden revelation that ends the work forever. It is a lifelong dialogue, a conversation that deepens with every season of your life. Just when you believe you have embraced all of your darkness, another figure steps forward, another dream rises from the deep, another projection confronts you in the eyes of another. This is not failure. This is the rhythm of individuation, for the self is inexhaustible, and the shadow, as one of its guardians, continues to bring you new fragments of yourself until the very end of your days. There is a temptation to believe that once the shadow is faced, the journey will be smooth, that suffering will vanish, but this is illusion. The purpose of shadow work is not to remove suffering, but to make it meaningful. When you suffer unconsciously, it feels like punishment, like senseless chaos. When you suffer consciously, it becomes initiation, a fire that purifies and transforms. You begin to see that every conflict, every heartbreak, every disappointment is an alchemical vessel in which something hidden is being burned away, so that something larger may emerge. And here we must speak of love again, for love is the crucible where shadow work becomes most urgent. It is easy to believe you are enlightened when you are alone, when no one is pressing against your hidden wounds. Solitude can feel serene, but it often conceals the unfinished work. Then you fall in love, and suddenly the calm shatters. Old fears rise, old wounds ache, forgotten traumas awaken. You find yourself saying words you never wanted to say, feeling emotions you thought you had outgrown. You blame the other person. You accuse them of betrayal, of cruelty, of failure. But if you are honest, you will see that the eruption comes from within. The beloved is simply the mirror, the one who, by their very nearness, has activated the shadow that lay dormant. This is why love feels so dangerous, and why so many people retreat from it into shallow encounters, into distractions, into loneliness disguised as independence. They fear not love itself, but the shadow that love awakens. They do not want to see the rage, the need, the jealousy, the vulnerability that surfaces when intimacy burns away the mask. And yet, without this confrontation, love remains a fantasy, a play of personas, a fragile arrangement that collapses under the weight of reality. To love truly is to say, I am willing to see my shadow through you, and I am willing to let you see yours through me. It is to accept that we are mirrors, and that the work of our union is not to maintain an illusion of harmony, but to grow through the tension of opposites. Love is not the avoidance of conflict. It is the sacred container in which conflict becomes transformation. And what of those who walk away? Sometimes, yes, love ends. Not all relationships are meant to endure, but even when a bond is broken, the shadow remains, waiting for its next stage. If you walk away without seeing the shadow, you will meet it again in another, repeating the same drama in a new costume. If you walk away having seen, having integrated, then you carry into your solitude a treasure that no separation can destroy. There is a deeper truth still. The shadow is not only personal, not only relational, but cosmic. The ancient traditions knew this well. They spoke of gods who embodied both creation and destruction, both light and darkness. Shiva dances as both destroyer and creator. Yahweh is both merciful and wrathful. The Tao holds yin and yang in eternal embrace. These are not contradictions to be solved. They are symbols of the archetypal truth, that the universe itself is shadow and light, indivisible. To participate in existence is to carry that paradox within you. The great illusion of modern humanity is to imagine that we can eliminate the shadow, that we can build a society of pure light, pure progress, pure virtue. But whenever a culture pursues purity, it ends in tyranny. Whenever a religion seeks only the good, it births fanaticism. Whenever an individual insists on being only holy, only moral, only virtuous, the shadow grows monstrous in the dark. The more you chase purity, the more violently the shadow returns. Wholeness, not purity, is the goal. Wholeness requires that you embrace contradiction. You are noble and base, courageous and cowardly, compassionate and cruel. To deny this is to live in fragments. To accept it is to live in truth, and when you accept it, you discover that the shadow is not merely the place of your shame, but the source of your vitality. From the darkness comes creativity, instinct, power, imagination. From the places you fear come the energies that can transform your life. Dreams will continue to remind you of this truth. Again and again, the figures will come: thieves, monsters, seducers, murderers. They will not leave you until you have taken from them the gift they carry. Each shadow figure is a disguised angel, and when you embrace it, the mask falls away to reveal the self. That is why in so many myths, the hero does not kill the monster, but learns from it, or finds a treasure, guarded by it. The shadow is the guardian of your treasure. It will not give way until you prove willing to face it without flinching. Let us return to the image of the mandala. When you draw it, or when it appears in your dreams, it is a sign that the self is near, that the psyche is attempting to unite what has been divided. Within the circle, darkness and light dance together, not as enemies, but as lovers. To live from the self is to stand in that circle, to know that every part of you has a place, that no energy is wasted, that even your shadow is included in the pattern of wholeness. And what happens when you live this way? Your relationships change. Yes, but more than that, your life itself becomes creative. The energy once bound in repression is freed for imagination, for art, for love, for work that serves something larger than yourself. The destructive compulsion loosen, the projections dissolve, the endless repetition of old patterns gives way to new possibilities. You cease being a prisoner of fate and become a co-creator of your destiny. This does not mean you cease to struggle. Life will always bring suffering, always demand descent into darkness, but now you understand the meaning. Now you know that when the shadow rises, it is not to punish you but to guide you. You walk into the darkness willingly, knowing that on the other side lies a deeper light. So I tell you again, the shadow you refuse to see is controlling your life and your relationships. But when you dare to see it, when you welcome it into consciousness, it becomes your ally. It becomes the bridge to your wholeness, the doorway to the self. To turn toward the shadow is to turn toward God, not the God of abstract theology, but the living image of totality within your own soul. This is the work of individuation. It is not for the faint of heart, but it is the only path that leads to freedom. For as long as you live in denial, you are bound by chains of your own making. When you accept your shadow, you become vast, spacious, able to hold contradiction, able to love fully, able to create without fear, you become, in truth, yourself. And so I leave you with this invitation tonight. When you sleep, listen to your dreams. Tomorrow, when you are angered, ask what part of you has been stirred. When you are dazzled by another, ask what part of you is being mirrored. Each of these moments is a summons, a gentle knock from the shadow saying, I am here, I am you. Will you welcome me? Do not turn away. Open the door, step into the chamber of your soul, embrace what you have long denied, for in that embrace you will find not only your darkness, but your light. You will find not only your weakness, but your strength. You will find not only your shadow, but yourself. And that discovery is the true purpose of life.